The studio lights shimmered against the polished floor of Colbert's stage as the band wrapped up their jazzy intro. The audience's laughter still echoed when Candice Bergen walked out, radiant yet reserved, wearing a deep navy suit that glimmered slightly under the set lights. Stephen Colbert stood, extending his hand with his usual charisma, that half-smile that made his guests feel at ease. Or sometimes, precisely the opposite. Candice smiled politely, the kind of smile that looked rehearsed, poised, perfect for television. She had done this dance before, countless times, but tonight there was something different. An undercurrent of tension that neither the audience nor the cameras could ignore for long. She took her seat, crossing her legs elegantly as Colbert leaned forward with his cue cards. He began with soft questions, the kind of small talk that made for an easy warm-up. She answered gracefully, her voice smooth and calm. But there was a flicker in her eyes, a shadow that betrayed her usual control. Colbert noticed, though he didn't acknowledge it. Instead, he leaned into his next question, the one that his producers had written in bold on his card. The moment he spoke it, the air shifted. He mentioned her controversial remarks from a recent interview, the ones that had gone viral on social media and reignited debates she thought were long buried. Candice straightened slightly, her smile freezing for just a moment. The audience murmured faintly, sensing the shift. Colbert chuckled lightly, trying to keep the tone playful, but his words had struck a chord. He pressed on, asking her whether she truly stood by what she had said, or whether it had been taken out of context. She looked at him for a long moment before answering, her eyes narrowing ever so slightly. Her reply was cool, measured, but with an edge sharp enough to cut through the laughter that followed. She said that she didn't regret speaking her mind, that she was tired of people twisting words to make headlines, that not everything had to be sugar-coated for the sake of comfort. Colbert raised his eyebrows, feigning surprise but secretly delighted. He knew tension drew viewers. He pushed further, asking a question that teetered on the line between curiosity and provocation. The audience gasped lightly, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. Candice's composure wavered for the first time. Her tone sharpened as she leaned closer to him, her words deliberate and firm. She accused the media of feeding off conflict, of turning every honest conversation into spectacle. Colbert smiled, half apologetic, half amused, but he didn't back down. It was, after all, what he did best, walking that tightrope between charm and challenge. The laughter in the room began to feel uneasy. Candice's jaw tightened as she spoke about integrity, about how interviews weren't what they used to be. She reminisced briefly about a time when talk shows were about conversation, not clicks. Colbert nodded, but his next remark landed wrong. He made a joke, light and sarcastic, about her being old school, suggesting maybe the times had moved on without her. The crowd laughed, but the sound stung. She stared at him, unblinking, her expression unreadable for a moment. Then she smiled again, but it wasn't warm this time. It was a smile born from restraint, the kind that hides the storm beneath. The cameras caught everything. The tension became electric, pulsing through the audience like static. Colbert shifted in his chair, realizing he had crossed a line, yet unsure how to reel it back. He tried to recover with humor, but Candice wasn't laughing anymore. She spoke slowly, her voice low but firm, saying she wasn't anyone's punchline, that respect wasn't outdated. The audience grew quiet. Colbert's trademark smirk fluttered for the first time that night. The silence that followed was heavier than any laugh could have been. She looked out at the crowd, at the dozens of faces watching her, half entertained, half uncomfortable. Something in her snapped, not with anger, but with clarity. She realized she was done playing this game, done being the veteran actress paraded out for laughs and nostalgia. She leaned back in her chair, her posture regal, her eyes cold. Then she said something no one expected. She told Colbert that maybe the problem wasn't her being old-fashioned, but everyone else being too comfortable with disrespect disguised as humor. Her voice didn't rise, but the conviction in it silenced even the band backstage. Colbert blinked, searching for words, but none came quickly enough. The cameras zoomed in on her face, on the flicker of emotion that finally broke through the fakaiti. Pride, defiance, exhaustion. She reached for her water, took a slow sip, and set the glass down gently, as though marking the end of a conversation she no longer wished to have. Colbert stammered something about taking a short break, but she interrupted him. She said she didn't need a break. She just needed honesty. The audience clapped uncertainly, unsure if this was part of the act or something real unraveling before them. Her gaze lingered on him for a beat longer before she turned toward the audience and thanked them softly. That's when the tension began to crack. A few people applauded sincerely, others just watched in stunned silence. Colbert tried to shift gears to lighten the mood again, but the atmosphere had changed completely. The charm, the banter, the effortless rhythm of late television. It was gone. What replaced it was raw, unpredictable. Candice looked around one last time, her expression calm now, almost peaceful. The storm had passed within her, leaving only resolve. The studio lights reflected off her earrings as she uncrossed her legs and stood. Colbert tried to speak, but she raised her hand lightly, silencing him. The gesture wasn't dramatic or angry, it was graceful, final. The audience gasped as she began walking toward the edge of the stage, heels clicking sharply against the floor, the sound echoing through the quiet. The cameras followed her, unsure whether to cut to commercial or capture the moment in full. She reached the curtain, paused briefly, and turned her head just enough to glance back at Colbert. There was no hatred in her eyes, just disappointment. The applause began tentatively, as if the audience didn't know whether to support her or stay seated. Colbert sat frozen, his cue cards useless in his hands. His producers gestured frantically from behind the cameras, unsure whether to stop rolling. Candice exhaled slowly and stepped through the curtain, vanishing backstage as the applause swelled into a roar. The screen flickered to black for a moment before cutting to a commercial, but by then, the internet had already taken over. Phones recorded, clips uploaded, and within minutes, headlines began spreading. Candice Bergen storms off Colbert's stage after heated exchange. Backstage, Candice walked calmly, ignoring the chaos around her. Assistants called after her, producers tried to apologize, but she didn't slow down. She knew what the world would say. That she'd had a meltdown, that she'd overreacted. But she didn't care. For the first time in years, she had spoken without worrying how it would be edited, twisted, or turned into a meme. The cameras had caught her truth, not her performance. She stepped into her dressing room, closed the door, and finally smiled, genuinely this time. Outside, Colbert returned to his desk, forced a smile, and joked about unpredictable live television. The audience laughed, but it sounded hollow. Somewhere in the control room, the producers replayed the footage, realizing they had just captured one of the most unforgettable moments in late-night history. And as the night went on, social media erupted. Some calling her a legend, others mocking her. But Candice didn't check her phone. She just sat quietly in her chair, looking at her reflection, finally at peace with the silence.